Hello, welcome to episode 11 of Awesome Women, and I'm joined today by Kezza Reece from Norwich. Welcome, thanks so much for coming to chat with me.
Thank you.
Kezza, tell us, you have just found out you're autistic about a month ago.
A month ago.
But you have an ADHD diagnosis before that.
A couple of years, yeah.
Okay, tell us about your journey. Tell us what life has been like for you since you kind of started on that journey of getting diagnosed.
Yes. So ADHD, there's a funny story behind that. I was because I'm also a wheelchair user, so I was at a disability conference and I was yakking away to this woman who I was having a moment's rest, and I was yakking away to this woman, and we just got on, and I can't explain it. You just, you know what it's like when you're in this community, you just click. We're all quite similar and we just clicked. And I'm yakking away and she's like, have you ever thought about the fact you might have ADHD? And I'm like, because it came out of like left field, and I'm like, what? And then she goes like this, and I look up and she's the ADHD Foundation.
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't even noticed. I mean, ADHD 101. So I was like, no, but okay, explain. So she explained, and I was like, okay. So I had my referral. It took 2.5 years through the NHS to get my assessment, diagnosed, went through titration, started ADHD meds, found a med that works okay for me, but it was quite obvious when I started the meds that it wasn't just ADHD. The meds exacerbate a lot of the sensory issues I was having, a lot of my processing issues, a lot of my communication issues became very, very clear. There was miscommunications going on. And then things like the ADHD meds are making me focus on things that was not what I was wanting them for. So like, I have an alarm clock beside my bed, and my phone is wireless contact charging. And I've always known it's pulsed, but on the ADHD meds at like 9 o'clock in the morning, I've taken my meds, they've kicked in, I'm hearing the pulse. I focused on it for 2 hours.
Oh God, wow.
On why was it pulsing?
So they did help you focus, just not on anything.
Just not on anything I wanted to focus on. Meanwhile, my daughter, who was diagnosed as a child, literally laughing at me. So she spent years laughing at me. I mean, since she's been diagnosed, she was diagnosed at 8. And she's always laughed at me, saying, yeah, it's autism. And I'm like, okay, fine, great. Well, it's hereditary, so hardly surprising, but not really connecting with it. But after the ADHD diagnosis and the meds, it became quite obvious autism was part of the mix. And then perimenopause amped up. So I've been in that for about 5 years. I'm 45, about to be 46. Perimenopause hits women around this age. And the ADHD meds stopped working altogether.
Oh, wow.
Which was a little terrifying. But my autism became very obvious. And then a few years later, I burnt out. So I'm in what's classed as burnout. I find most things quite difficult. The autism's quite noticeable. Well, noticeable enough that I've got a diagnosis.
Yeah, I just got more autistic now.
I got more autistic. Enough that I got diagnosed. I don't think I'd have been diagnosed 10 years ago. I mask like a queen.
Yeah. And that takes its toll then. Do you reckon like that masking has kind of...
I can't mask. This morning I've put my makeup on. I've tried to get pro mode on. I'm my working hat. I'm trying to get in that mood, but I just burnout means I can't. I literally can't. So you get me in all my glory.
Yeah. Yeah, because people think burnout is like, oh, in the bed, not able to do anything, but it's actually, and I think we spend so long of our lives functioning under pressure, living under pressure, and just getting on with stuff that we can do it. So then to other people, it doesn't look like we are burnt out.
I've run businesses. I've got 2 children, both of which are divergent. I've got a husband. I've got a dog. From the outside, I look like I've got a normal neurotypical family, and it functions. You know, bills are paid. I've got a mortgage. You know, I've had jobs. I've kept jobs. I've looked totally like every other woman who's managing a household, and then now I can't.
Okay.
In any stretch of the imagination, am I managing now?
Okay, so tell us about perimenopause. Obviously, I'm the same age as you, so I'm very interested in this.
So perimenopause is the period before menopause. So menopause is technically 365 days without a period, and it lasts 1 day. So this is where the terminology comes in. And yes, I deep dived.
Yeah. So I'm looking
so 365 days without a period, that day becomes your menopause. That's the day. That's your and then your post-menopause.
Oh, okay.
Before that, for a period of up to about 10 years, it's different for every woman. Not everybody gets all the symptoms. It's what's so exasperating about the whole thing is no two women experience the perimenopause the same. There's a massive list of symptoms of about 50 different symptoms that you can get. The one we all know about is hot flashes, where you suddenly get really hot and sweaty and you've got no idea why, and then it just goes again and you're cold because you're sweaty. There's also night sweats, where you'll wake up in the night and I mean you have literally soaked through your sheet into your mattress and you can literally see the outline of your body because you've sweated so much in the night, and then you're cold because you've sweated.
Yeah.
They're the ones that everyone knows about, but there's also fatigue and forgetfulness and anxiety and panic and fear. Fear was a big one I experienced last year. It's what made me seek out HRT. I mean, paralyzing. I mean, we all have anxiety. Maybe not everyone has anxiety, but a lot of us have anxiety.
Well, round about 80% of autistics do, so yeah. And
have anxiety. A lot of us also have panic attacks. This is like something I've never experienced before. It was paralyzing fear. I literally could not move on my bed. It was, I would wake up in a panic attack. The panic attack would last all day. And I was in paralyzing fear. And I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, would you know what the source of that panic was? Nothing.
It wasn't a source.
Yeah.
I had nothing on that day. There was no appointments coming up. I didn't have any posts. The dog was fine. My children were fine. There was nothing. There was no source to that fear. It was just waking up in the fear. Wow. And I spoke to my GP, and I'm very, very fortunate. I've got a wonderful female GP, and she says, yeah, that's perimenopause.
Okay. Well, I mean, you must have been delighted to have a word for it as well. Because you know,
I mean, I've got a friend. She set up a hub on Facebook. She came to me a long time ago because they were trying to diagnose her with ME. Now that's because there's fatigue, forgetfulness, brain fog, anxiety, all comes as part of perimenopause. That also comes as part of ME, and her doctor thought she'd got ME, otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome. She came to me because I have that. I've had it for a decade. She wanted to compare notes.
Yeah.
It became very obvious very quickly that's not what this was. Hers, she could literally tie to her menstrual cycle.
Okay.
So then she's done a lot of research and discovered perimenopause. So she's gone really big into that world. And because she'd asked me about the ME, I was like, what is this what? And I, very autistically, deep dived into the research. And I mean, I'm in 2 o'clock in the morning, thank you, ADHD. I'm reading research papers from scientists. Obviously, I can't just read a book. No. So I discovered about the estrogen receptors in our brain. And without the estrogen being, because our estrogen and our progesterone fluctuates. So we know we have our cycle when that normally progesterone kicks in, and then we have our period. And then it settles and we have that. But with perimenopause, you're not got your cycle anymore. You still get, I mean, I've still got my cycle, but I'm also getting spikes.
Okay, yeah.
And that's when it's then affecting the ADHD meds don't work, because you have estrogen receptors in your brain. If you've not got your estrogen, or your estrogen is all over the place, your receptors aren't functioning properly, which means you're also not getting your dopamine, your serotonin, and your oxytocin.
Okay. All those things you need.
All those things you need. Hence the panic.
Okay.
Because that's also what gives you anxiety.
So then when you went on HRT,
it settles. It's fantastic.
Wow.
It's not perfect. I could probably do with it tweaking, but I'm happy enough. I don't wake up in the fear. I've not got the panic. And it literally went away 24 hours after starting the HRT.
Wow.
Which is a little terrifying that it was that simple a cure.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have my anxiety, ADHD and autism related, but I don't have the peri.
Yeah. Just the normal anxiety and fear and panic that we have.
Normal. I have my normal level that I've been living with for 40 years, but don't have the peri on top. Okay. I also don't have the night sweats, and I don't have the hot flushes, and I don't have as much brain fog as I had with the peri. And you can suddenly see things start to settle out, and you go, oh, that must have been perimenopause. So I still have I've still got ME, I've still got ADHD and autism, but I don't have peri as well. Well, I do have peri as well, but my hormones are now equaled out.
No, it's interesting that you're talking about like brain fog and fatigue, because even myself for the past year or two, no, I don't know, because we had COVID. I didn't know. I was like, maybe I had it and I didn't know it. I had long COVID, but just like literally. But now I'm paying more attention to my cycle, and actually it is very much like just being floored, like where I never would have been before. I'd just be able to get up and do things, like literally getting up, maybe drop my kid to school, and then I have to lie down for a few hours.
Perimenopause.
Yeah, tell us some more symptoms. What else?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. All I could say is really it's worth connecting with the perimenopause community. My friend set up a peri hub on Facebook. I think I've sent you the link to add.
Brilliant.
It's worth adding, because if you are around this age and you're suddenly fatigued, forgetful, your executive functions are suddenly not functioning. I mean, they've never really functioned for us anyway, but if they're really not functioning and you've noticed a drop off.
Yeah. And you see, there's so much, because obviously we do cope with all those things all our lives.
We do.
We put a lot of stuff down to burnout or being neurodivergent and living in this world that doesn't accommodate us and all that. So yeah, it's looking out for those changes. So, and yeah, okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, because I know in pregnancy, it's
I know. I had to. I know.
And it's,
I hated being pregnant. I couldn't. My mum's one that she loved being pregnant. I mean, she'd have lived her entire life just pregnant, I think. She loved being pregnant. I really, really hated it. Now I realize it's a sensory thing for me. I really struggle with the whole sensory thing of being pregnant, because there's so much.
There is so much. And I, like, at the time as well, yeah, I would have because there's so much change going on. Also, I was masking so much. I mean, ridiculously so. I was wearing high heels when I was 9 months pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no.
I could do anything. I was like Superwoman.
Because we're told we could do anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to pretend I can do everything and I'm perfect, because that's the role I'm playing. So yeah, it was like literally a joke where one of the schools I was working in, the caretakers were like, oh, you're going to wear them into the labour ward, because I was literally like, and I had the biggest bump. I looked like I was wearing triplets or octuplets or something. I was huge. And they were like, oh, my heels. Like, and when I look back now, I'm like, what were you doing?
What were you doing?
It was so much part of, and people like, oh, Evaleen, you look amazing, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And sure, that's all you kind of want to hear. And inside it was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to. And I just found that, which happens for a lot of women, I don't think it's just neurodivergent women, but a lot of the past traumas and stuff we hadn't dealt with, and things, you kind of start realizing some of the stuff that was done to you in your life wasn't right. You're like, you're kind of, because I suppose you're going into mom mode, protective mode.
We deal with a lot in that mode.
You're doing a lot, and all this stuff is kind of coming up. This new life force is kind of making you, I think, question these things. And Yeah, like I was getting angry over stuff, and that happened years ago. And like again, I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't know anything about trauma, and obviously how our emotions and hormones and all these things interplay anyway. It's not like, they're separate. So yeah, I suppose I'm just trying to kind of like, whereas you might get anxious or annoyed about something, this is like quite overwhelming and comes from nowhere. Well, obviously it does come from somewhere.
I mean, pregnancy is a great way to compare to peri if you've been pregnant, because in pregnancy your hormones are all over the place.
Yeah.
Peri is like that. The bonus being you're not pregnant. But yeah, they're all over the place, and the amount of the woman that is regulated by our hormones is all of it, and not having the consistency with the hormones, so they are up and down all the time. That rage you talk about with pregnancy, that's a peri thing that can knock you sideways.
It's so good to talk about these things, because I found women, that's the hormones, so you just think, everyone's going through this, but probably they're not all.
They're not, that we're all going through it, but we're not all going through it the same. And the way I try and explain it is it's the same storm, but we're all in different boats.
Yeah.
And I love that.
That's a good
because that explains it. Some of us have got motor cruisers that have got air conditioning, and some of us have got rowboats with holes and no oars. And I'm definitely in the rowboat without an oar.
That's such a good way to look at it.
And it's the only way I can visualize it, because it really has knocked me sideways. And then there's so many other changes that come with our age that really we don't know is coming. And people say, well, people with autism don't deal with change. It's not that we can't deal with change. I can deal with change. I've been dealing with change.
Every day is different,
It's not knowing what's coming.
Yes.
And for me with the peri, it was not knowing, it was coming.
And I suppose this is kind of a problem, I think I'm realizing recently, like as a woman, with an 8-year-old going on 9-year-old daughter who's starting to ask me about periods and all these kind of different things, and I'm explaining them to her because they were never really explained to me properly.
Yep.
And
it was never explained to me. I learned about it in school.
Yeah.
And we all know how great that was.
Yeah, and I didn't really like, I was like trying to listen out to bits that other people were talking about, and it really isn't the right, when I think back, I'm like, why would you do that to a kid? And it's only when you kind of realize the shame that's in our kind of society.
It's genetically coded at this point.
Yeah, it's like we don't talk about our bodies, we don't talk about what they do, and I suppose I love that idea of kind of going back to the way things were, the way like, family, women were together. Like at one point, our cycles go with the moon. I was like reading this book for my child going,
we would have had a community. We would have had a village community. In bygone years gone, past, we would have had a community. Women would have been doing a lot of this stuff together as a village, where they would have been preparing, I don't know, the grain for the village for that day. And we would have been talking whilst we've been preparing. It would have been obvious what was going on. We've all become so isolated in modern society that we don't have those connections unless we make them.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to make them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to find the people to still get into the group. But yeah, because we would have learned all of those things quite naturally. And it's
would have done.
Natural, like literally, and even like parenting, siblings helped out, and you watched your auntie breastfeeding, you know what I mean? It was just normal.
It's just been, that's right. And it's not anymore.
And now it's like
such an individual, we've all become, yeah,
and it's obviously not working for us, as a human race, basically all of us, this disconnection. And it's the shame. I think it was just kind of just even the way we refer to our bodies and parts of our bodies. It's like, oh my God, yeah, it's like you're whispering, it's like literally we're kind of taught to be ashamed of our bodies.
We are, but then that's hardly surprising when most of our body is used as a derogatory term in language, and then language becomes a big part of that. You start once you start realizing it, and then you start listening for it, and then you start realizing how many times is anything to do with a woman or the woman's body become a derogatory slur.
Yeah.
So why would we talk about it?
It's I mean, that's it. It's okay to do that. So it's either derogatory or sexualized.
Yes, or the other, absolutely.
Shame us for sexualizers. Can't be, and I just, I do find that I don't know, like we're just kind of in a place where we think we've got women's rights, and we think we're, you know what I mean? But we're not. It's just
nowhere close. We're nowhere close. Oh, there was research that came out this week. It's been all over LinkedIn about if there's 17% of women if 17% of the group is made up of women, men think it's 50%.
No way.
And that's been all over LinkedIn this week. Is this? And then people are going, is this for real? Like, so if it's not even a quarter,
yeah,
if like, so if there's like 2 women in a room, you're gonna think that's like, like 10, 15 women, and it's like, because men have been so used to being the only gender in the room.
Yeah, I hadn't read that now, so that's amazing how society has shaped that perspective then. How their experiences have. So there's only
no wonder we apologize all the time for taking up space, because men, men, I'm going to do that so you don't end up in trouble later. Men, not all men. It's we're trying to find space in a world and create space, but there's only a finite amount of space.
Yeah. So move over and make some room for us.
They've got to make room for us. We're here.
Yeah.
We've always been here. Apparently we make up more than 50% of the population.
So rumor has it. And
I'm like, really? So there's more of us than them.
And not just in like people's minds, there actually is 50%.
There actually is more of us. There's actually more of us. Step aside, we're coming through.
Like 50. That is so bizarre, isn't it? I know, but you see, and I'm just so interested in like how this stuff, links in with, reaching your 40s.
Oh,
hitting menopause, all of this stuff. Like
there's and I have a very interesting theory. Now this is just my theory.
I love theories. Go on, tell me.
This is just my theory. I am not in any way a professional in this field. My theory is, if our estrogen and our progesterone is all over the place, the only hormone that we've kind of got in our body that's consistent is testosterone, because we have testosterone. So suddenly, the only consistent hormone we've got in our body is testosterone. Now, is that why women of this age suddenly go, do you know what, I've had enough?
Yeah.
Hello, I've been here for 40 years. Now I've had enough coming through. Are we now actually tapping into our testosterone?
Maybe.
And this is my theory. I think we're tapping into the testosterone. So the reason men get so, annoyed with us at this age is because we're tapping into our testosterone.
Yeah.
That's what I reckon. That's my theory. I shall obviously do more research.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to prove it, but I mean, at the moment, it is just a theory. So
it's a theory. My theory is, I think we tap into our testosterone at this age, because suddenly we stand up for ourselves. I mean, I'm standing up for myself a lot more. I definitely get rages, not so much since I've been on HRT, but definitely rages. I'm less compliant.
Oh, good. Yay.
I know, right? But and then you realize just how much you've let things go. I mean, I've let a lot go. And then you suddenly realize how much you're letting things go and how much you have done, and now you don't want to anymore. And that's definitely a peri journey, I don't want to anymore.
There's so much to it, because it's like, you do. You just get fed up in your 40s. You're like, I'm not, being this thing.
I'm not doing it anymore. This is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, either walk away or just be quiet.
But I mean, do you think that like finding out you're autistic, ADHD, has led you also to that point. Like, I mean, there are women who kind of hit this point in life and don't have the change. Like, I know I've unmasked like massively over the past 8 years.
It's why I went for the autism diagnosis, because obviously women of our age, we don't really need to go for the autism diagnosis other than confirming we've got autism.
Yeah.
And I got to a point when I went, actually, I do need that bit of paper. I do need to see it in writing. And the 15-page report is very difficult reading at this age. That's where I went for it, because I got to a point when I think I needed to see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we live our lifetimes being validated by other people, so I totally get why we need a piece of someone else to validate what we already know.
What I didn't expect to get was the confidence.
Yeah, wow.
Is knowing this is my community, knowing it's definitely ADHD and autism, knowing that's the reason why I've had so many issues in my past, and go, oh, that's why. And I mean, 2 o'clock in the morning seems to be my time when I get this flood of memories, and then suddenly you're looking at it through your ADHD and your autism glasses, and you're going, oh, now that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's been great. I mean, I'm only a month in, and that's been great. And so I can only imagine that in a couple of years' time, the confidence will only grow some more. So I'm getting confidence, and it's just knowing that if I'm having a miscommunication, I can go, it's probably because I'm missing something. And knowing that's because I'm not picking up on things like, I mean, I've learned body language. I mean, I've read the books on body language.
Yeah, but our body language is different.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, so it's like other people need to learn our body language now.
Right, absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm going now with when I got my diagnosis with ADHD, having had that year of exploring it and realizing that it was a very lonely journey. And I think you can't underestimate how emotional that journey is. I mean, our emotions are pretty overwhelming anyway. It was a really uncomfortable, awful year. And that's when I went into the coaching.
Yeah. So tell us, so basically, are you talking about the year after your diagnosis,
that year of, because obviously with autism, it's going to be different because I've already done it with the ADHD. And this is a lot more gentle. I'm finding the autism diagnosis a lot more gentle for me. I'm not having that same roller coaster of emotions that I had when I got my ADHD diagnosis, because I have PTSD as well, and I had to suddenly see it through the lens of it's because you're divergent. Yeah, and all the misunderstanding, and then why have I got PTSD from my life, and then I've got siblings who've gone through the same childhood and had similar relationships to me, and they've not got it. What's different about me to them that I've got it and they've not? Why me?
But that's a really interesting question for humanity. Like, how people go through similar traumas, some people worse traumas than others, but you know, if you can even measure it that way, that's, you know, but from the outside, but like, why do some people develop PTSD and CPTSD and then other people don't? And it just, like, obviously it's kind of how you are inside before that event, I suppose, you know, that kind of sense of self. Obviously, I think that's like our best protection against anything, but also the support network and people around you. And if people,
support network's a big one.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's so much to it.
And if you've not got those friendship groups in your childhood because you're divergent, so you've not got those connections to people around you, you've not got those friendship groups, so that when you are experiencing trauma in your childhood, you know, the consistent criticisms, the failures, that over and over again failures, being punished for the failures, when that all adds up, all these little pinches have gone through your childhood, if you've not got that friendship group which you can let those emotions out with because you're divergent and you've got miscommunication issues, you are more likely to get CPTSD. Yeah.
And we also experience so many more negative comments and more negative.
Oh, yes.
You know, I mean, like that's a massive part of it. It's like, you can all put up with it a small bit, you know, because you got something to balance it out.
It's how we grow. You do something wrong, you get criticized for it, you learn from it, you move forward. Yeah, but for us, there's a lot more.
And also, if you're, you know, being criticized for forgetting when that's literally like not like anything you have control over, or for being the last kid getting ready or getting your stuff together or whatever it is, that's like, you don't even have control over it. It's not like an intentional thing, but you know, yeah, we do it. And I don't think people kind of realize how much negativity surrounds us, like, and how hard it is to deal with it. You know,
it is hard.
No wonder we're getting angry for 45.
Right.
And waking up in panics.
Especially when you get your diagnosis and you go, oh my goodness, if only I'd known.
Yeah. But you know, it was interesting there what you said about the lenses, because like for me, I found out I was autistic kind of first, and then I thought, oh, that explains, you know, everything. And then I started like realizing, oh, actually I have like tons of anxiety and trauma, and then you're looking through different lenses, and it is
to see what fits.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I would say like, yeah, and obviously with our minds, I went over my entire life, and everybody I'd met in that kind of few weeks after diagnosis. You know, initially it's like, yeah, great, I know now.
It is great, like, now I know, fantastic. It is. And that is why I went into coaching.
Yes.
Because there are so many of us dealing with this late diagnosis. It is so disruptive. Everything we've ever known about ourselves suddenly becomes and then there's all these memories, and we get overwhelmed and we can't process it, and we're not going to get counseling because nothing's funded. I've not had PTSD coaching. I had counseling back in 2007, and I've not been able to get anything since. It's so underfunded. So you're left to deal with it on your own. Here's your diagnosis, here's your report, there we go away, read it, well done you.
Yeah.
And you're like, great, now what do I do? And for me, because I've got the ME, I've had to learn how to deal with an ever-changing disability. I've had to learn how to make a life for myself within a world that's forever telling me it's not enough. I've had to learn then how to apply ADHD. I've had to learn how the ADHD affects my body and how to manage that with the ME, and now the autism as well. I've had to learn how to carve out a world that is good for me and my family in a world that's always going to tell me it's not enough.
Yeah.
And how to cope with that.
Yeah. Well, just don't listen to what the world says.
No, well, yeah, I mean, that's an easy, yeah, but you know, we deal with a lot, and I went into the coaching because dealing with that change, especially at this age, even if the change you're dealing with is perimenopause and you've not got ADHD and autism, there's a massive change in your life that you've never had to face. Suddenly your health isn't, your body's not doing what it's always done. Mm-hmm. It's suddenly creating very weird situations which you don't know how to cope with. Your estrogen is no longer regulated, so your brain's not functioning at its optimum, which means your executive functions are all over the place. So things like your working memory, procrastination, organization, things that most women have gone through their life having no issues with whatsoever, and suddenly they can't remember doctor's appointments. Mm-hmm. And that's where the coaching came in. I just thought, okay, let's take life back to basics and learn how to hack it.
And so tell me, okay, let's say, so is it just for women in general of a certain age? Is it for?
It's that's what I'm attracting. Mostly I'm attracting women who've either got a very late diagnosis or who are hitting perimenopause.
Okay.
That's not what I've aimed it at, but it's what I'm attracting. So a niche came to me, I didn't pick it, I'm doing it.
Well, we attract people.
I just seem to be attracting those kinds of people. And it tends to be people who, through one reason or another, are suddenly feeling a bit lost. And it's the easiest way to explain it is things aren't going as they planned, but what they're dealing with now is so outside their scope of understanding and knowledge, they don't know how to move forward. So it's technically coaching and mentoring.
Yeah,
I do a mix of the two. I've dealt with a lot of change. I'm quite a creative person when it comes to solutions. I think that comes with the autism and the ADHD. No, in fact, I know it comes with the autism and the ADHD. We have so many issues we have to deal with. We just learn how to I love the phrase, think outside the box. We don't even have the box.
Yeah.
So we're so far out the box, we're not seeing it. So
also, we take in so much sensory input.
We do.
Output.
And then with the ADHD, we process information so fast. So not only are we taking in all the information, but with ADHD, we're processing all the information so fast, we can come up with solutions really quickly.
Yeah, while the person's still talking, and then it's like, you're not listening. I'm like, I am.
I am.
I'm over here now.
But I've just gone through 1,000 scenarios in my head, and I think you should try this one.
Yeah. So I have never gone to a life coach or a mentor. So tell me, what would you do for me?
Okay, so
I are typing probably.
So I would go through what you're not happy with.
Okay.
And that's normally tends to be the first meeting, tends to be going through, why have you come to a coach? People tend to seek out coaches because they're not happy with something, they've got to change, they want a promotion at work but can't seem to get it, they're stuck in a rut. I love that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't get out of it. They've discovered they've been doing this for so long and they don't know how they got where they are now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big one for me, is they don't know how they got where they are. And something tends to have changed. So either your body's not doing what it's supposed to do, you've just got a diagnosis, you've become disabled in some way, any of these.
Yeah.
You maybe started struggling at work in a job that you've been doing for 30 years and you don't know why you're now suddenly struggling to do the stuff you've been doing for 30 years.
Yeah, maybe you realize you don't really want to do that thing you did for 30 years.
That's a big one. That's a big one. So you'd come to a coach because you want somebody who you can bounce ideas off.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who can unpack it all and then pack back up the stuff you want to keep. And then, we sit with you to help you work out what you want. And
that kind of how to get there. Which is the problem for most of us, because finding out what you actually want. A lot of us know what we don't want.
Yes. But we don't know what we want.
Yeah. Like what is
this comes back to the village.
Life. Yeah.
This comes back to the village. This comes back to that we would have been raised in a village. This is something that we would have discussed whilst making a meal with all the other women in the village. We would have had a sounding wall.
And also we would have had people who recognized our talents and our flares.
Right.
Which doesn't happen now. It's like standardized schooling. This is what we all have to do.
We're all on our own.
Instead of actually realizing, wow, this kid is like really good at this or this, and rites of passage. Like I just find that is something that we've lost, and it's so important,
It is. We're going through a massive change at this age and we don't know what to do next. We are losing a lot of the functions that we've had all our lives. Well, for those that aren't ADHD and autism, we've been dealing with executive functions always. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of women, this is the first time that they suddenly just can't do the thing. Yeah. Or they're now the skills that they've always had with planning and prioritizing, suddenly they can't prioritize.
Yeah.
And it's the first time they've hit a period in their life when they don't know how.
Yeah, and I do think women, obviously, autistic and neurodivergent women mask, but I think women in general, like everybody masks.
We all mask. We definitely all mask.
The effects that it has on us or how we mask is probably different.
We hide so much of ourselves when we walk out our front doors.
We're like tottering around on heels, smiling our face.
Yeah, we are. We're walking around on heels.
Like, oh my God, I've just been, as we just said, sexualized or, like oppressed all my life. And we're all walking around like this. It's like, sometimes you do wake up to that. And I suppose, and that's kind of, I suppose I'm really always interested in not just hormones, but like the relationship between how we feel about ourselves, our past traumas, our worldview, how we, all of that, and how all that kind of works, on a biomedical level then as well, biochemical level as well. And it's like, it's all relative, it's
all connected.
And I really do. And I just, and I think that's why there's such a need for, women's groups and even these conversations. Like, I love it.
And then sometimes you just need to unpick your life and then keep the bits you want to keep, get rid of the bits you don't want to keep, and replace them with things you want. And that's what I do. I will sit there with you while we go through it. And obviously I've got a wealth of experience, being that I am divergent. I use a wheelchair. I am absolutely used to navigating this world without all those skills. I've had to find alternative ways of doing a lot of things.
Wow.
And I bring that to my sessions.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. I'm sure your clients are so lucky to have you and all that. And also that you can bring in all that experience, you know, which is obviously tough.
It's a strange one.
Helping other people.
Human beings has always been my special interest. It's one of those things that I have been absolutely fascinated with since I was a child. I've done so much reading. You know, I read body language books, psychology books, sociology books, history books, you know, medical books. I've read so much, and I actually get to apply it. Yeah. And it's such an honor to watch these women come to me where they feel like they've lost something. They've lost, whether it's their footing, their direction, their health. They come to me and they've lost something, but they don't leave like that. And that to me is such an honor.
That is amazing.
To help them find that space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if people want to find out more about you or get in touch with you, Kezza, which is the best way to do that?
Email is a great one for me. I do video sessions, so you don't have to be in Norwich to come and do coaching. I have clients all over. And my website is in development, so don't judge me by my website. That was me pre my autism diagnosis. That was me masking my life off. No, it's really odd. Now I'm diagnosed a month later, my website's changing, because that website's not me. That's me thinking what a life coach's website should look like.
Yes. But it's not me. You stop doing things for other people and stop. What do other people want? Isn't that such?
It's so interesting, isn't it? And my website is changing, so I'm literally in the middle of making the website. So my website is there. It's got all my contact details on it. Please don't judge me by my website. It's me before I was diagnosed. I'm now unmasking my website.
Judgment has no place here, people. Okay.
It's just a place so you can contact me. I'm doing my website. It's slow, but I fit it in where I've got time and energy at the same time.
So if you're watching this in a few months of time, you're going to look at this amazing website.
It'll be if it's a yellow website, that's me. If it's a blue website, it's not me.
That's the other Kezza.
That's the other Kezza who was masking. That's my makeup. Makeup's coming off.
Yeah. Do you find though, it's like, even with your, you know, PTSD diagnosis, ADHD, and now find out you're autistic, that there's still more unmasking to do? Like
so much. And then there's aspects of me that I can't unmask. So I've discovered PDA autism. My daughter's had it always. That's always been part of her life. And wanting to connect, my daughter's now 24. So wanting to connect with my daughter as an adult, I started doing a lot of research in autistic PDAs. I've done a lot of research, and that's part of my journey, is I'm now discovering PDA and how much that explains some of the difficulties I've had. So unmasking is not done yet. I don't think I'm even scratching the surface, to be honest.
No, I mean, like at one point, because I did so much unmasking and I kind of just went through a period where it was like quite intensive and quite quick, that I just was like, I think it was just like deconditioning. I was like, oh my God, I see what's going on. I can't be that person anymore, quite quickly. But then there's these little things, and like that demand avoidance where I'm like, someone asked me to do a job and I'm like, oh, I can't get that done. I haven't time to do it. I'm there to my husband. I haven't time to do that thing for that person. And then I'm like, what are you doing? And it's just that awareness though of catching myself and going, what are you doing? Why are you procrastinating? And then kind of going, oh, it's self-doubt. Underneath, it's, I'm afraid that person isn't going to think what I do is good enough. Even though that person has come to me saying, I think you're great, I want you to do this thing, I still, and it's that self-doubt.
That imposter syndrome is horrendous. And when you've been criticized as a child and through our entire lives as much as we have, it is really hardly surprising that when it comes to doing something that we know we can do, we know we've got the knowledge and the skills, but they have this nagging doubt in the back of our head that goes, but can you?
Yeah. Oh,
you can.
So, yeah, it's the first thing though is to be aware of it, because if we're not aware, we can't catch the thing. But yeah, it's amazing how these just little things creep up me every now and then, and
the demand avoidance is a really interesting one, because you've got the emotional demand avoidance where we just don't think we can do it. We don't think we've got the right skills. We don't think we can manage it. You've then got the fear of success or the fear of failure. But with demand avoidance, mine, autism related, is more like, it's because you've told me to do it.
Yeah.
I now just can't do it.
Yeah, well,
even if I was in the middle of doing it, doing it, now I can't do it because now I have to.
Yeah, no, can't be doing anything that have to
Not happening. Not happening. Yeah, so yeah, that one so the unmasking nowhere close to being done. I am just scratching the surface. I know that, and I can feel I'm only just scratching the surface. I'm very, very fortunate that my husband is incredibly laid back, and he's just going with it.
Brilliant. But I found for me, like when I kind of went on my journey and I was like, oh, I'm finding out all this stuff and rethinking everything.
Oh, the reading as well.
And yeah, I mean, just like so much. And then when you start looking at your own trauma, you really start to understand other people around you, and you start to see everybody else's trauma and how we're really just traumatizing each other in this world that we're in now.
Yes.
And
how we've created this world that really isn't serving any of us.
Exactly. So we need to like go rewind and redesign and start again. But yeah, I mean, I just find that he's also gone on his journey now of like, kind of realizing, oh yeah, I'm probably dyslexic, was never diagnosed. Actually, I'm probably autistic too. Actually, there's like loads of stuff, and just kind of that getting to know yourself and getting in touch with yourself, and learning this emotional language that like was denied us for so long because we didn't have an opportunity.
We didn't have the language, we didn't have the words. We didn't have the words to describe what we were experiencing.
Yeah. And also people dismiss you. It's like constantly, you're overreacting. You're like, I don't know.
I mean, by the time I hit adulthood, I'd pretty much stopped explaining how I felt at all.
Yeah.
And I'm having to reconnect with so then you go, that's the difference between interoception and trauma and interoception and autism is this the trauma? And I actually just stopped talking about it, because every time I talked about it, I was told I was overly sensitive, or you're over dramatic, you're a drama queen, all the things I got called as I was growing up, because my emotions are so much bigger than the average person. I realize I feel things so much deeper than the average person. I wasn't overreacting. I was reacting to what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And to honor myself, I have to reconnect with that. So, and to find that I'd shut down so many of my emotions over the last sort of 30 years, and to reconnect with them at the same time as finding out you're autistic, and everyone's going, yes, but autistic people don't have emotions. And I'm like, clearly that's wrong. Who told you that?
We're quite intense.
We're actually so intense, we shut down. I don't look like I'm emotional because I get so overwhelmed, my face just goes numb.
Yeah. And because people around us are telling, don't be flapping, don't be all that stuff. Like, and that's why it's kind of like, until we have autistic people who aren't traumatized, then we'll know what it, you know what I mean?
And you kind of hope, will we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I do what I do. It's like, I see this future where life is way better for autistic people, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be trying to change.
And the irony, the absolute irony, that if you created a civilization that was good for divergent people, all the neurotypicals would also be living a better untraumatized life.
Well, a world where we can all be ourselves. What?
Imagine that. It's just,
you see, I think people actually are under the illusion that we are, and that's the problem. Some people think we are living in that world, like, no.
I mean, our ancestors would be thrilled that I can order hot food to be delivered to my door. Yeah, I'm sure they would be they're absolutely amazed that I can order and my groceries get delivered once a month. I'm sure they would go, oh my goodness, I have the world of knowledge in my hand, in my phone. But I'm still masking. It's still not me. Hi, it would be nice to meet people as I am.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's been lovely talking to you, as
you too
are almost there.
Almost there, getting there.
Yeah, and you know what, we have days I'm always like even things like makeup, I'm like, because I don't bother half the time now. I'm wearing some today, but like I don't bother because it just I don't care what other people think of me anymore. And then I'm like,
get me started on that subject.
Am I masking? Should I be wearing this? And then I'm like, stop. Do you know what? You're doing great. You've done so much. You can't change everything about yourself, when you've been doing something for so long. And actually the overthinking it gets too much at times. So this year I'm deciding, you just do what you feel like on the day, whatever you have time for, and just don't be analyzing it. And because
don't be analyzing it. Good luck with that one.
Yeah, I know. Kezza, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure. I'm going to put the links to your website and to that
perimenopause hub. Definitely
put that in as well underneath.
There are thousands of us women in there, all discussing our peri journey.
Yeah, I think I might join it. Sounds like when you're
I highly recommend it.
Brain fog. I'm like, yeah, anything else? All those days when your brain doesn't work.
There's a list in the notes on the hub.
Fantastic. I will definitely check it out. So thank you so much, and best of luck on the rest of your journey. I'm sure we'll talk again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.